Welcome back, everyone. I'm Jason and you're watching Jason Jensen Trains. Well, today's episode has nothing to do with trains or even HO scale. Today we're going to be building a military tank that is 1/35th scale. Now keep in mind that all the techniques that I'm going to show you today can be used on rolling stock, engines. All of the techniques I show you applied to a boxcar would look incredible, either in N scale, HO scale, O scale, whatever scale you're working in. All right, well, the kit that we're going to build today, the company Ammo was kind enough to send it to me. And as you can see, it's made by Ammo. This tank was used in the Spanish Civil War. I've already opened the box, and the detail on this tank is incredible. I'm just blown away by this. Now, like I said, Ammo was kind enough to send me this because I think they want to see what someone who has no military kit building experience could do with something like this. So here's the kit from Ammo, and Mig Jimenez, the owner, was nice enough to autograph it for me. I'm truly honored that he would send me this and want me to build it. Let me quick show you the book that comes with it. The book has some history on the tank, and then it provides some photos. And then it gets into all of the parts. As you can see, there are a lot of parts. It is extremely detailed. They also provide tips on weathering, on placement of decals. And then they provide 4 different decal sets in the model. And so these pages show you how to apply those. All right, I've already got this started, so let me show you where I'm at. Now keep in mind, this is my first time building a military tank, and I haven't put together a plastic model kit since I was a teenager using Testor's model glue. Well, what I recommend is extra thin cement. Here you can see all of the detail. And you have the option of leaving the hatches open, but there are lots of little hooks. For instance, there's one on each side, and you have to glue those on. So I recommend working in on your table. Don't work towards the edge because you'll risk dropping some of those really small pieces onto the ground. Then use a brand new blade. You want it extremely sharp, and if you need to halfway through the build replace it and put in a brand new one, do so. Now this plastic is fairly soft, so it's very easy to cut pieces off of the sprue. Extremely easy. Another tip is pointy tweezers. Tweezers are going to be very important, and again, you want to work up here rather than down here towards the edge, because you'll go to grab a piece and it'll flick onto the floor and you'll never find it. One more piece of advice: either use a clothespin, or if you have tweezers, so you can see if you squeeze it back here, it opens. So just for an example, okay, so see, it holds it upright for you. Then let's say you have a small piece that you have in your tweezers. And again, important, work more in the center or up towards the front of your table. Then with that small piece, hold it where it's supposed to go. Then with your glue, brush some around the edges of the piece. It doesn't take much glue at all, and it almost instantly sort of welds the plastic together. Incredible. This glue is so nice. And as you can see, the tip on that brush is very fine. Okay, other than that, just simply follow the instructions and take your time. It does require some patience. Okay, I'm going to get back to building this. I'm not going to show me building it because I want to spend more time on painting and weathering it. So to tell you what I did, I first sprayed the model with a brown primer using this airbrush because it has a different sized needle which allows me to do a large area. I then switched to a different airbrush that has a finer needle. I took a dark brown and mixed a little bit of black with it and then did the shadow areas. Now I'm going to take a reddish color, dark rust, and do some of the large flat areas, especially on the top. So I know my hand's in the way a lot when I'm working, so I just wanted to show you quick what this looks like. Okay, so I decided to break out my turntable, and I believe I got this off of Amazon. All right, next we're going to spray this with chipping fluid. Now, you don't want to do everything all at once. We're just going to do this here because the longer this dries, the less effective it is. So we'll spray 2 thin coats over this, and then we're going to put tan over it. Okay, it's completely dry, so now we'll go ahead and put another thin coat on it. Okay, now I'm just going to blow straight air and dry it. Now we're not going to cover it solid. We're just going to do some random areas. I'm just using an old brush and clean water. And you can see already we can use a toothpick to scrape the edges. I'm now going to switch to a smaller, finer brush from Ammo, and it is yes, now we have a little bit more control over the chipping. Okay, while I've got this out, let's go ahead and do some sponging on it. So now I'm just going around the edges. And if you want to, you can go in and do some very fine chipping. Now on these dark areas, we'll come back in with some graphite so that you can see the metal coming through. Let's go ahead and keep working on this. Next, we're going to use a shader, and it's light rust. So I only put a few drops in there. Now we're going to try a little bit of orange. Now I'm using a light rust wash. And I'm just blending that wash out a little bit. All these effects are very subtle but very realistic looking. Okay, next, we're going to use the same techniques on this. And the first thing I'm going to do is spray it with the scratches effects. Now, I'm only going to focus on the top half, and then we'll focus on the bottom half and the bottom after that. For those of you who are nervous about airbrushing, it is so easy. It is easier than you think, and especially with all of the ammo products, because you don't have to thin them. You can just put them straight into the airbrush and start spraying. Now we'll just use straight air to dry it. Okay, now we'll go ahead and put on our second coat. Okay, now we'll go ahead and dry that. Now we're going to spray on our tan color. I don't know if you can see that in there. There's not a lot. You want to take your time and do thin coats. As far as cleaning your airbrush, I keep a eyedropper, and I simply take clean water and fill it halfway up, run it through it. As you're doing it, maybe take a brush and dab it down in there. Make sure you're getting it all clean way down in there. Then when you feel like you have most of the color out, put a few drops of odorless thinner in there and run it until it's completely gone. Make sure that your tip is completely clean. Clean that with some thinner, and you're done. It's quick. It's easy. There's not a lot of overspray. I'm not using a spray booth. I probably should be. Very little spray. The spray is going directly onto the model, and because there's air, it dries super fast. Okay, now let's start chipping this. So first we're just wetting the surface, just getting a thin, even layer of water all over it. So we're not applying pressure, we're just brushing it on. If you start to apply pressure, it'll start chipping. So the first thing is just to put a thin, even layer of water over it. Let it start to soak in and do its magic. So we can start with our toothpick. Then we'll go over those areas with our brush. And now I'm using a smaller brush. Hopefully you can see that. It's just incredible. Now we'll just quick dry it. Okay, now I've got some dark brown on my palette, and I've got my sponge. And we're really just hitting all the edges. And then later we'll come back over these with the over. Be sure to handle your model very gently at this point, because there's a lot of little detail parts that you've already glued on, and you don't want those breaking off. Now if you want to get really super detailed with it, tear a little piece off. Okay, now let's go in with our shader, Light Rust. A little goes a long way. Okay, now we'll use orange. And there was just a little bit in there. I sprayed the rest of it out, and I'm not even washing it. I'm just dumping this right in there, just a few drops. Okay, so it's still a little wet, but I wanted to show you where we're at so far. Well, it did not turn out the way that I thought it would. Oh well, we're experimenting. So what I did was, because it just looked so splotchy, I used green gray and did a misting over the entire thing. So it does look like at one time it had camouflage on it, and maybe it's just worn off. So what we're going to do now is we're going to heavily weather this. We'll go back in with some rust. I just got out this light rust shader. We'll spray some more rust on it, and we'll use a wash to bring out all of the lines for all the panels, and we'll really dirty it up. The great thing is that I'm learning about all of the ammo products and how to use them differently. So it's a learning experience. So I've been working on it for a while, and I had learned a very good lesson. You know, I was trying to make it look like someone else's work. I was trying to copy techniques that I saw on YouTube, which is okay, but this is definitely more my style. And there's lots of details that get added to the sides there. And of course the treads. I think I really started having fun once I just started doing it the way that I wanted to do it, just sort of in my own style. All right, well, we still have a lot to do on this, so let's get back to work. Well, this is where we're at so far. I spent a lot of hours painting all the details. I have a flag on the back. I love the way the exhausts turned out. You'll notice I did some of the detail parts bluish green color, and I know that it was painted the same color as the tank in real life, but the blue really gives it a nice contrast. Okay, now I have to paint all of the wheels, and just the ring around the outside has to be painted. I'm going to paint them a dark gray. And then we can move on to painting and weathering the tracks and getting those put on. And then last, we'll put some dirt and mud on the tracks. But I'm really happy with how this has turned out. I was pretty nervous at first, and you know, it's my first tank, so I've learned a lot, and I would be so much more comfortable doing a second tank. I like that you can kind of see the camouflage pattern that was on there at one time, but all the paint is chipping off. So on that detail part right there, I painted it a base color and then did a black wash over it. I'll show you the black wash. So it really just goes in the cracks, brings out all the detail. Then I dry brushed using this. And then last, did a little bit of, it's a light rust wash. So as you can see, it's all strictly ammo products. I think that's a huge part of the success of the neat effects on this. It's all due to the ammo products. All right, let me get these wheels painted. I also want to mention that during this video I've been trying to improve my lighting, and I actually bought some small lights, some LEDs that I have next to me. So I keep adding lights and trying to improve. So I apologize at the beginning of this video. The lighting probably wasn't the best, could have been better, but I keep trying to improve the channel. So hopefully you can tell a difference in the lighting. Hopefully it shows off the models better. Well, I've put a brown primer on all of the tracks. Now we're going to take old rust, dark rust, sorry, and spray these. You want to do really nice thin coats. Do a thin coat, let it dry for just a little bit, doesn't take long, and then spray it again. And I'm trying to do random. It probably looks even on the screen, but it is a little random. Okay, for our diorama we're going to be using this mud from MIG. This is called Dry Earth Ground. Now the closest color I could get to match this is called New Wood. So we're going to spray some of that on the edges of our tracks. We'll spray a little bit of water through this to get rid of that reddish color, and then we'll pour in that. Now I'm going to try to focus just on the edges. Now you'll notice I'm just working on the bottom. We'll go back and work on the other side. Okay, now we'll work on the tops. And I think maybe again I'll just focus on the edges. Okay, while we've got this color in the airbrush, let's actually put some on the model. So I think I'm done using my airbrush for the day. So all I did was I took the back off of it. Well, first I ran water through it, and then I ran some odorless thinner through it and got it as clean as I could. Then you just unscrew this and very gently take the needle out. And you can clean the needle and then pour some more odorless thinner or just water and run it through there. Open it all the way and press it down all the way and just blow it out. And swirl a brush down in there real good to make sure that it's really clean. Then after you've got this all clean, and you can even take off, you can unscrew the tip. Clean it. Put the tip back on. Gently, you don't want to bend the end of that needle. You want it to be straight. Very gently push it all the way in till it stops. Don't force it. Screw that on tight. And there you go. It is clean and ready for the next session. All right, well, I need to cut these out of the sprue, and then we need to glue them to the tank. Now, again, this is my first build, my first model tank. I'm sure each one is different, but you can see on the instructions. Hopefully you can. So there's sections, and you can see there's individual ones that go on the ends. So, not quite sure how to tackle this. The first thing I'll do is cut these all out of the sprue and take it from there. It's really not that hard. It just takes patience, and they actually fit together perfectly. So make sure that when you're putting it together that they completely go together. There's no gap in between them. Okay, now we have this piece, the last piece. Make sure it's going the right direction. Wow, and of course it snaps in there perfectly. Oh my gosh, seamless. What a great design. Incredible. Wow. I was so nervous that there would be a gap. All right, not too bad. Now I'll go ahead and do the other side. While I'm waiting for this to dry, before I go and do the other side, I'm going to take our new wood and paint the ends of those where we cut them off the sprue. We'll use our small fine brush. These brushes, I've been taking such good care of them, so I used the odorless thinner to clean them and then put that clear tube cap back on it so they stay nice. It's getting very difficult. I'm getting nervous handling it. Want to make sure none of that plastic is showing. Man, I have even more respect now for those military modelers. Oh my gosh, they are so talented and have so much patience. Now we're going to brush on track wash. So we're just adding some value, some dark value to it. We'll go pretty wide down the center of the track, and you may not be able to see it, but it's getting into all of the cracks. And we can do some areas that are darker. Doesn't all have to be the same. Now we'll go right around the center. Now we'll go back in with our odorless thinner and blend that out a little bit. So if you get the area damp, then take the wash, just put a drop on there. It just goes into all the cracks. So we're softening all the edges so you don't have hard edges. So it creates some nice subtle value. Okay, so let me show you an oil brusher. And this one is Earth. So I don't know if you saw that, but it's very, very little. We'll soften that one on the end a little bit more. There we go. So again, we're just putting dots. So you can see that oil brusher will last years probably. And we just blend it out. So you go on both sides of your line, dragging it down. Okay, next we're going to use splashes. It's dry earth. Now you may ask yourself, well, why can't I do that with regular paint? This is a different consistency. It's just made for doing this technique. It's not too thick, it's not too thin, and again, this jar will last for years. I've already done some on this side. Just going to do a little bit more. Now let's take our dry earth ground and work on the tracks. And let me grab a different brush for this. Now this is very thick and very textured. My camera seems to do better when it has gray under the model rather than white. I don't know why that is. Just is. Don't know if you're able to see this. So I'm going mostly in the center of the track. Okay, then before it dries, wipe it off flush so that you see the edges of the tracks. Because we're going to go back and paint those silver next. I'll take the camera off in a little bit so you can see the progress. Okay, next we're going to take a number 2 pencil. And you can see I took my X-Acto knife and shaped it that way because we're going to drag this over all the tracks. This is why it's important when you put the mud on to wipe it smooth with your finger. Get your finger wet and wipe it smooth. Okay, now let's do our dry brush paint. And we'll even go over all the little ends. Not all of them, but we'll do some. I glued on the 2 hooks on the front and the little tow cable things. Now I should have painted these first, or at least primed them first. I just got in a hurry. I'm going to use a dark brown called chipping, and that's going to be our base. And very carefully we're going to paint these. Okay, now we're going to use our light gray, or green gray. We'll quick rinse our brush. Now we also have the cable that goes on it. Now I sprayed a primer on this. Let me grab the instructions. Okay, well they provide a couple pictures for you. So it's a little tricky because the ends of these are hollow. So this cord is supposed to fit in there. All right, well let me get my tweezers and my super glue and do this. Okay, so the first thing I did was I held it down and cut it at an angle. And this is a brand new blade. So it gave it a really fine cut. So it has a really nice point to it. Now we'll put some super glue on it. And it slides right in. Perfect. Okay, next we're going to paint some figures because I want to put this tank on a diorama. Now, you'll notice these are Russian figures and our tank is a German tank. But what's great about these is that you have the option of changing the helmets, changing guns, so you can make these figures look like German figures. Well, as you can see, I spent the evening gluing all of these together. And there's a lot of pieces. The legs are separate, the arms, the head, the hats, the guns. You can really customize these even down to, I have not added any of the pouches yet that go on the belts, or I haven't done any backpacks yet. I'll add that later. But so the next thing we'll do is prime these, and then we'll start to paint them. Okay, well, as you can see, I have a black primer on there that I sprayed through my airbrush. You know, I gotta give a quick shout out to my good friend Dave Cruzwick, who is a great modeler, but he's also a retired history teacher, and he provided a lot of information so that I could paint these properly, so that it makes sense. Same with the tank. He just gave me quite a bit of a great history lesson on the Spanish Civil War. So big thanks to Dave Cruzwick, and you can see his work at Dave's Workbench. Next, we're going to use stone gray. Now, any light gray or a white would work. All we're going to do is spray downward, and this will give us all of the highlights. So you don't want to spray going up or maybe a little from the side, but you want to make sure that you're going down. I shook this really well. Now I'm going to go really fine and just try to do the face and hands. Okay, our primer is all done. Hopefully you can see how detailed these figures are. Now, when we paint our colors, we can thin them slightly, and the black is already, it'll provide the shadow, and the white or the light gray will provide the highlight. It'll actually change the color of the paint. Now, something I want to mention is that you can use a putty and fill some of the cracks before you put your primer on. I did not do that, and I kind of took the lazy way out, and I put them together with Loctite super glue, and I used the gel. The gel is kind of a slow drying super glue. When I put it on, like when I glued the arm on, I put it on both sides and then pressed it together, and it actually melts the plastic a little bit and it fills that seam. Then just take your knife and kind of scrape over it after it's dry, and you can see it completely fills it in, and you don't see a seam. So just a quick little trick for you. Okay, let's get painting some of these. We'll start by painting the skin, and I want to point out that Ammo makes this special paint that is for painting figures, and it's a little bit thinner. It's still acrylic, it's water-based. So you can see this one is light skin, then we have a warm skin. So we'll be using the figure paints to paint these. Possibly not the uniforms. The uniforms we may use the paint that we used on the tank, at least some of them. So I'm starting with the warm skin tone, and I'm working in groups of 3. So I start on the first one and paint all of the skin tone, trying to get it smooth. Take your time, make sure that your brush stays wet. Dip it in water, make sure that your brush doesn't get dry. You want a nice thin, even coat. Then by the time you reach the third one, the first one will be pretty much dry, and you can go back in then with your paint, getting your brush wet, dip it in the water. I'm dipping it in the water off camera. Then go through and hit the high areas. Go ahead and leave the shadow areas, the low areas, kind of the grayish color that they are. Hit the knuckles, the fingers, high points. Then use light skin tone. After you've done that to all 3, go back to the first one and do your highlights. The forehead, the bridge of the nose, the chin. This is a little bit more of dry brushing for highlight colors. Now, you really don't need to go all that detailed with this. And it sounds like a lot of work, but it actually goes pretty quick. And with the black and white that we put on it to sort of prime it, that is creating our shadows and our highlights. To me, it's very relaxing. I like this. In hindsight, I should have waited to glue the helmets on. Might have been a little easier to paint, but that's okay. It's okay if you get some of the skin tone on the uniform or the guns. When we paint the other items, we'll go right up to the edge and it'll clean it right up. The brush I'm using is, let me see if you can see this. It's a 2/0. A good thing to remember is that you're not trying to cover it all at once. Put a thin layer on it. Like I said, if you're working in groups of 3, just start by putting a thin layer on each one, and by the time you get to the third one, the first one should be pretty much dry. Then go back and put another layer over. You want to build your layers slowly. Okay, so I just mixed up a pinkish skin color. I used a little bit of burnt sand, very, very little magenta, and then mixed in the light skin tone with it. I'm just doing the cheekbones and the end of the noses, just to give it a warm feel. I'm also going to hit some of the knuckles with this pinkish color. The uniforms will go quick. The skin is what really takes the longest. Just remember to keep your brush wet. Okay, I'm just touching them up a little bit. Some of them got a little too pink. So now I'm just kind of dry brushing the skin tone just to kind of blend it out, especially on the cheekbones. So I've gotten a bit more done. I did the pants. They are 5 or 6 drops of earth brown, and then 3 to 4 drops of dust. Let's see. Then I just took the straight dust and did some dry brushing. And then the hats are straight earth brown. I know it's probably hard to see. Okay, next we're going to do their coats, or top half of them, and then we'll do their boots satin black. Now for their coats, I'm going to do a dark green and the earth. It might be close to 50-50. I might do more of the green, but it's green gray and the earth brown. I'm sorry, I told you the wrong color. We're going to do this, it's kind of an olive green. It's dark. We'll do the highlights with the green gray. Okay, the figures are pretty much done. I may do some more dry brushing on them, but next I'm going to put a ultra matte varnish on them. So now I'm just taking a little bit of the mud, the dry earth. Gotta get my brush wet. And we're just brushing a little bit on the edge of their boots, so it matches the dirt on the tracks on the tank. I absolutely love the way this stuff dries. It just looks like real dried, caked on dirt. Okay, I may take a light green and do a little bit of sponging on the helmets just to give it a little bit of texture. Okay, we're gonna have to do some mixing. I'm using a bright green, then we'll use green gray. We may even put in a little drop of the original color, this olive green. 2 drops. Okay, let's see if this works. Yes, it works. It definitely gives the helmet texture and also gives it a little look that it's chipping. Okay, one more step. We're going to use the dry brush paint again, the silver, and we're going to do some right on the edge of the helmets. Doing a little bit on the top. So now I am taking a filter, and it's called Starship Filth. And I am actually putting 5 o'clock shadows on these little figures. Man, this is just so fun. Again, I'll take the camera off in a little bit and show you up close what this looks like. Okay, we won't do all of them, but on some of these I'm also using this sort of as a wash, putting it in the eye sockets. Man, with this little brush, you can get into lips and create a shadow. Wow, what a project. All right, let's go over this quick. First off, when I started this project, I was intimidated by all of the military modelers that I see on Facebook and Instagram, because there are just some incredible modelers out there. So the first thing I did was I went to the Ammo by MiG YouTube channel and watched a bunch of videos on how to apply the ammo products to military tanks. Well, after I watched a bunch of videos, I dove in and I built the model, I primed it, I put on rust colors after it was primed. I then put chipping fluid on it and then proceeded to put tan over that so that when I chipped it, the rust color would show through, and everything was going great. Then I decided to put camouflage on it, and I didn't have the correct tools to do the camouflage. Ammo sells a putty that you put on there to do the camouflage, which makes it super easy. I did not have that, so I used a misket that I had, and I gotta say, the project took a turn. So I walked away from the project for a little while, and when I came back, I had a clear head, a clear vision, and I was determined to make it work. And I think I did. I think that the end result came out really great. I'm really happy with it. So I learned so much from this model. I learned how to better use the ammo products, and then again I learned that to stick with a project and not get discouraged when it's not turning out the way that you want it to. So again, by walking away for a little while and coming back to it, I was able to save the project. And again, all of the techniques that I showed today can be used in any scale. They really can be. Oh, and real quick, I want to point out, Ammo did send me this shirt. Very nice shirt. So if you want, you can go to their website and you can get the kit, and then you could also get the shirt if you wanted to. So again, huge thanks to Ammo for sending me this. It's an honor, and I'm just so thrilled with how it turned out and everything that I learned from building this model. I really hope after watching today's episode that you push yourself to try a different scale or a different type of modeling. It really will help you to grow as a modeler. I know that after this build, it has really helped me to grow as a modeler. I just learned so much from this project. All right, well, that's all I have for you. Hopefully you got a lot out of today's episode. Next, we're going to build a diorama for this tank. And again, all of the techniques that we'll be using to create the diorama can be used in any scale. So stay tuned for that. And if you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. And until next time, stay motivated and happy modeling, everyone.